Hello, James Pratt. Welcome to Chess Comedy Books, number 9. This is probably going to be the last of this series for the time being anyway. And what I thought I'd do is show one or two older books which might be of some interest to you, and it may spark some little memory in me, if not in you. And we can maybe flesh this out a little bit. So the first book I'm going to show you, which is pretty rare, is Brighton Chess. I've been talking to my friend John Upham about this. He's doing a little biography of many players, but one of them was Mrs. Baird and her mother. And this is a book about Brighton Chess, unashamedly put together. The author is Brian Denman, and it contains about 300 games and results. And it goes right back to Victorian times, I think. Let's have a look. 1841. So yes, it talks about Kennedy and Staunton and Blackburn, giving a simile in Brighton, and comes more up to date. No doubt the war intervenes. And it will talk about Ray Keane, who gave a fair bit of help behind the scenes, I think, for this, which was very kind of him. It's very nicely put together, and it does contain a lot of games, most of which I think I would have to conclude you wouldn't have seen otherwise. There it is. Chess pieces combined with a Brighton Dome by Julian Simpole, Confederate of Ray Keane's, and also a retired art teacher, and you can see his strong influence there. I think that's rather nice, and it is very rare. The next book I want to look at is by Garry Kasparov. There he is, looking pretty sporting, don't you think? And on the back, it's called The Test of Time, and it's published by Pergamon, who used to be based in Oxford and now don't exist, at least under that name. And probably the reason I'm really showing you this is, look, I actually got him to sign this when he came to the Oxford Union to give a talk about his book. Not this book. Summer is Ending or something. This has been translated by Ken Neat, which is often a sign of quality, to say the least. And it deals with games played from about 1978 round to, excuse my hesitation, but not sure really, round to 1982. It gives games from the interzonal, and he qualified finally. Yes, he's run up to the World Championships when he beat Smyslov in the final. Absolutely amazing to me, and also, in a way, the criticism of the qualification system that Vasily Smyslov got all the way to the final. But, well, he did. Here is Garry in various poses. And here is Garry looking a bit forlorn, wearing a hat. Presumably in Moscow, I don't know. Let's have a look. In Baku. So it couldn't be further away from Moscow if it tried. Let's just have one more look. Yes, the Soviets always like to cast people in different roles. So, you know, Botvinnik was an engineer, and Geller was an artist, and Spassky used to clean out people's gutters. Here is Garry playing football. And good luck to him. I hope he enjoys football. But I can't help thinking that in reality what he was a chess player. And here he is with some other guys. If you don't know who these people are, you've come to the wrong place. Tao, Polygaevsky, and with greasy hair and folded arms, Anatoly Karpov. This is not an easy book to get hold of these days, but if you do see it around, snap it up. It's a good one. Right. Now, the next book I want to look at is even older and is published by Penguin. There it is. It's called The Penguin Book of Chess Openings by W.R. Hartston. W.R. Hartston is now on television on Gogglebox, talking about this week's television. But in this era, he was talking about openings about which he knows, or knew anyway, an astronomical amount. The book was published in 1981. So is that 40 years ago? It's hard to believe it. In descriptive notation, and that deals primarily with king and queen pawn openings. There's a bit of chat about irregular systems, but basically it's a very good little book to take on holiday with you, or just slip into your jacket pocket or what you will, and then just leave it there because you've forgotten it's there. No. No, what I actually meant was, you can look through it on journeys or basically give you a little refresher. And even if you find that your knowledge of the system is much deeper than young Bill goes in these books, you will find little tips and tricks that are well worth knowing. I would very strongly recommend it as a refresher for you. Now, the next thing I want to look at is a book called Queen Sacrifice. Once again, this is not a very well-known title. It's part of the Pergamon Chess series, and it is by Neistat. Neistat was, I think, Soviet theoretician would be the right thing, sort of behind-the-scenes boffin, and it deals with various queen sacrifices in middle and endgame positions. Unfortunately, the text is a bit small. I don't know what you think. There we are. A bit small, but nevertheless, it's readable. And it does contain some spectacular, surprising, and good fun stuff. I recommend it very highly. It's got an index. I mean, for example, there is 8 games by Tao. Or, for example, there are 3 games by Pacman. Or, for example, Anderson, not Ulf Anderson. There's 7 games by Anderson. And 8 games by Chigorin. So we are in good company, aren't we? Interesting cover as well, don't you think? What do you think? Nice cover? I think so too. Okay. Now, here's something much more recent. A book about Capablanca. There it is. Subtitled A Chess Biography. It is by Miguel Sanchez and has a foreword by Andy Soltis. In other words, you're in good company. This is an absolutely enormous book. Enormous. Capablanca is a very thoroughly covered world champion. He's been written about many times. This book has 553 pages and any amount of indexes, as I'm told that it is the plural of index, at the back. I'm still wading through them. It even shows how he died in his brain when he at the autopsy. I certainly want that. And deals with contemporary sources. Here's a letter. Anybody should want to see a letter, I don't know. But there we are. There's a letter. Let's find out what it is, because I don't know. It's to do with his wife. He expresses disappointment that only 8 players took part in the championship group. And it's actually from Capablanca. I can speak a bit of Spanish, but I can't translate all of this without a dictionary at my elbow, written in 1938. So Capablanca was to have a short life, which was terribly sad and terribly shocking, really, when he died. Lasca and Alekhine and Capablanca all died within 10 years of each other, which robbed the world of 3 of the greatest players of all time. And there's a cross table of Margate 1935. Once again, scarcely a famous tournament, but all the more reason to have a look at it. Let's see if I can get it in for you. Oh, I think I can. Yes. I'm worrying I'm going to drop this. There we go. Sort of, anyway. There. It was won by Reshevsky, who had come back into chess, presumably, having been away a while. Capablanca got 7. Reshevsky, as I said, got 7.5. And then George Thomas, and then a lot of English players, also Irish, Brian Riley there. Milner Barry, Vera Menchik, born in Moscow. And last but not least, Jacques Mises, who was to make his home in England right round into the 1950s. There's various skittle games, simultaneous games, and pictures of those that entered into Capablanca's world. And I think the thing about Capablanca was he was like an ambassador. When he went somewhere, he did command respect, and he made sure, you know, that the mayor was there, or the photographers were there, or the ladies were there in their finery, their lovely hats, set pieces. Here he is in 1927, of course, playing against Alekhine in the enormous match they played in Buenos Aires for the World Championships, which Capablanca, surprisingly, but it was a surprise to him, that wasn't a surprise to the victor, lost 6-3 with loads and loads of draws. I don't know how many, 34 draws or something, or maybe they played 34 games. Capablanca was never to get the opportunity to challenge Alekhine again. Had he played Alekhine in, say, about 1930, rather than Alekhine played 2 matches against Erva and 2 matches against Boglibov. But I think really, had he played Capablanca, maybe a shorter number of games in Europe or somewhere that he fancied playing, I think we would be in for some very interesting games. But I still think Alekhine would have emerged overall victorious. That's my feeling. I think Capablanca would have prepared very well and not been shown up in any respect, but I think on balance he would have lost. So going back in history, here's an amazing tournament, London 1922. There we are. There it is. London 1922. Which was won by Capablanca, a point ahead of Alekhine, with Vidmar Rubinstein, Boglibov, Reti, Tartakova, Maroczy, and F.D. Yates, and H.E. Atkins, who's being profiled today on British Chess News by my colleague, Dr. Upham. So, what a lineup, eh? What a tournament. Here's a picture that sort of endorses what I was saying earlier of Capablanca, the ambassador. He looks like he's enjoying himself in the cartoon, and he is flying with the flag, Cuban, I assume. Annotated games. His match in 1921 against Lasca. and his victory in the victory tournament at the end of the First World War in Hastings, which he won with embarrassing ease, 10.5 out of 11. In other words, he whitewashed them. He drew with Kostic, who Scholenbeck never tires of saying blew himself up like a bullfrog, and thought perhaps he might be as good a player as Capablanca. But he wasn't. The darling of the ladies. It said of Capablanca that he had more girls in his room, and they would be laid out on the bed, and he would be going along as if he was giving a simultaneous display. Now, you didn't hear that from me, but if that's true, or even if it isn't, I wish him luck. And as the saying goes, give him joy. Here's Capablanca's game against Frank Marshall. You can see the depth of notes, fairly comprehensive. You might want different sorts of notes. You might want a little bit more chat. But nevertheless, Sanchez, who wrote this book, I've never heard of him. The book is published by Macfarlane, and if you want a copy of it, I think you'd have to part with the best part, 50 or 60 pounds. He played early games as a child. He was born in 1888. So here he is, age 13, playing against Corso. And it calls him the boy prodigy. And here he is as a young guy, a young man with, look at that, see? Lost in introspection and not smiling one bit. You think the photographer will say, smile please, say chess. I think he's got spats on, very wide collars. He looks a bit sulky, but never mind. Here's the match held in Cuba, held in Havana, between Lasker and Chigorin. Considering Lasker was from Germany and Chigorin was from Russia, they went a long way to play chess, didn't they, before they got there? A nice book, but not a light read, obviously. Published by Macfarlane. I'll put the details downstairs. I'll put the details. Now, here's a little thing. This is written by Sarah Hurst, whom I had the pleasure of having lunch with last year. She is a lady who has travelled around pretty widely, I suppose, and at one time was up in Alaska. But she and her daughter came home. I think possibly one of her parents died, and they are now in Goring or somewhere near there. She wouldn't want me to tell you exactly where she was. Anyway, she came to Reading, and we had lunch together, which was very pleasant indeed. And she's signed my book. There it is. To James, great to meet you in Reading. At the bottom is cheers, Sarah Hurst. So cheers to you, Sarah. And this is some reprints, with some modifications probably, of interviews that she did over the years with people like Tony Miles or Smyslov and Botvinnik or Szabo or Ken Wilde. Obviously, these have now dated a bit, but I think they're pretty good. I mean, Sarah's very high-level journalist. There's Luke McShane, when he was a little baby, except he's not, well, baby. Sounds insulting. He's probably about 10 or 11. 23 years ago, so how old would he have been? I don't even know. There is Mr. Adoyan, a very interesting player. There he is. Adras Adoyan. I think he's a bit, And here is Szabo, the late Szabo, a wheelchair user who was one of the strongest Hungarian grandmasters before the emergence of Lajos Portis, and he played several times in England. And here is Mr. Lilienthal, who was one of the oldest grandmasters Bit of a laddo, actually. Bit of a laddo. Had a girlfriend not younger than himself. I think he beat Capablanca, didn't he? Not everyone that can do that. The reason that this book is called Curse of Curson is because that was the name of the Fide president whom Sarah couldn't stand. And she's a political activist, still is. And yes, she wanted to denounce him. Well, she did. In more ways than one. Just flicking through to see if there's any more photographs that I haven't shown you. No. No, I don't think so. Okay, then. Well, there's another book for you to look out for. I'll just do one more. This is a book that's recently gone through another edition, and I got the more recent edition, which this isn't. And I actually prefer this edition. And the reason for that is that I think it's better laid out. As I get older, I prefer the layout. It's fairly leisurely. If you look at that, there's a lot of white space. You could say it's wasted space, but I don't think it is. I think it sets it in perspective. I mean, if you had an art gallery, you wouldn't just thump them against the wall, would you? You'd give some thought to what they are and where they should go, where they shouldn't go, and what the lighting's like. There we are, look. Anyway, let's start from the beginning. It's published by Mackay Chess Library, who are American, and it's called Best Lessons of a Chess Coach. And it's by Sunil Wirmantri and Ed Usibi, of whom, as I always have to add, I've never heard. But I've heard of Sunil Wirmantri. He played a bit in England. These are games which are explained in fairly straightforward terms in order that the reader can also become a teacher, so to speak. And the themes explored are how to take the initiative, combinations, strong and weak square, color complexes. And it's put together like a sort of little story. He talks you through a game. Once again, I can only repeat, at a leisurely speed. My friend Stuart Knox, who does a lot of coaching and had been my friend for over 40 years, so not everyone of whom that can be said, thinks very highly of this book, as do I. 320 pages. If you wanted a copy, and I hope that you do, I'll put the details down below. Well, thank you very much. This will be the last chess comedy books, and I shall be back in one form or another in due course, I think, maybe on Zoom, maybe here on YouTube, I don't know. I have been James Pratt, and you haven't. Goodbye.